In this city, no one truly lives freely. They survive under names that carry weight, families that carry blood, and men who never need to raise their voices to be obeyed. Because here, power is not voted for. It is inherited and enforced. At the top of that invisible hierarchy stands the Virelli name, a name spoken only in warnings, a name attached to silence, disappearances, and control. And tonight, that name is about to collide with someone who was never supposed to matter. Elena Moretti. She was not supposed to matter. Not in this world. Not to men like Dante Virelli, the cold-blooded mafia heir who built his empire on silence, violence, and control. A man who does not ask, only takes. Elena lived quietly, or so she believed. She worked in a small art restoration studio tucked between forgotten streets. Her hands always stained with paint, ink, or dust from things that had survived longer than most people she knew. She preferred objects that didn't lie, because people always did, especially the ones who started appearing too often around her life lately. Men who spoke in half-threats. Men who reminded her of debts she didn't remember borrowing. Men who acted like she belonged to something she could not see. That night, she stayed late at work. The rain outside the gallery fell heavily, swallowing the city in blurred lights. She didn't notice them at first. 3 men, waiting, blocking her path like they had every right to. "You've been avoiding calls," one of them said. Elena stepped back slowly. "I don't know what you're talking about." A lie. A weak one. One of them reached for her wrist. And the world shifted. A door clicked open behind them. Quiet, controlled, but final. They turned and froze because Dante Virelli was standing there. He didn't rush, he didn't speak immediately. He simply watched like the outcome had already been decided long before he arrived. Elena didn't know who he was at first. She only knew one thing. The men holding her were afraid. That fear spread to her. "Let her go," Dante said. 2 words. No emotion, no hesitation, just certainty. The men hesitated. A mistake. Dante stepped forward once. That was all it took. She was released instantly. But Dante's eyes never left Elena. Not once. Not even when the men backed away. Elena should have run. But she didn't. Because something about him didn't feel like rescue. It felt like recognition. "You're hurt?" he asked quietly. "No," she replied quickly. "I'm fine." A pause. His gaze dropped briefly to her wrist, where the grip had been. A faint mark. Something tightened in him. "I didn't ask for help," she added, firmer now. "I didn't say you did," he replied. Silence stretched. Then another set of footsteps echoed down the alley. The same men, reinforced more now. Elena's breath caught, and without thinking, she took his hand. That single touch changed everything. Dante didn't look surprised. He only said, "Don't let go," and moved. He led her through the rain-soaked street like he already owned every exit, every shadow, every threat before it arrived. The men followed, but they never closed the distance. Because Dante Virelli didn't run, he controlled space, and space obeyed him. When they finally reached safety, Elena pulled her hand away. "I don't know who you are," she said. Dante looked at her for a long moment. Then, "You will?" But even as he said it, something inside him shifted. Because he had seen her before, not in person, in information, in reports, in leverage files tied to a debt she didn't understand. At least, that was what he told himself. But none of that explained why he couldn't stop looking at her now, or why silence felt different when she was near. Elena was taken to the Virelli estate, a place that was not a home. It was a fortress disguised as elegance. Every hallway felt controlled. Every door felt watched. "You don't belong here," she said sharply. Dante removed his coat slowly. "You were brought here for safety. I never asked for it. You didn't have a choice." That sentence lingered too long between them, because neither of them truly believed it was about safety anymore. Days passed. Elena tried to leave. She couldn't. Not because she was locked in, But because every exit was watched, every step accounted for, Dante never raised his voice. He never needed to. He only appeared. Often. Too often. Watching her paint. Watching her eat. Watching her exist like she was something unfamiliar he was trying to understand. One evening she snapped, "Why are you doing this?" Dante didn't answer immediately. Then quietly, "Because you don't look at me like I'm dangerous." Her brow tightened. "You are dangerous." A pause. "That's not what I mean," he said. His voice lowered slightly. "I mean, you look at me like I'm still human." That was the first crack. Not in the world. In him. Because Dante Virelli did not fear enemies. He feared perception. And Elena was the only person who saw him without fear. Or worse, saw him clearly. Then came the betrayal. It didn't announce itself. It leaked in. A missing shipment. A broken trust. A name whispered too often. And Elena's name began appearing in conversations she was never meant to hear. One night, she heard it clearly. Once she's removed, Virelli loses leverage. Removed. Not saved. Not protected. Removed. Her breath stopped because she finally understood. She wasn't safe because she mattered. She was safe because she was useful. And usefulness always expired. That night, Dante returned different. He already knew she had heard. "You should forget it," he said. "I can't." A pause. Then something in him shifted. "You're not part of this," he said. Elena almost laughed. "I've never been part of anything." Silence. That was the truth neither of them wanted to name. "You are now," Dante said, and it didn't sound like protection. It sounded like possession. The attack came at night. Fast, clean, coordinated. Too professional to be random. Elena didn't even have time to process it before Dante was there. All was there. What followed wasn't chaos. It was control in motion. When it ended, silence returned. But something inside Dante didn't, because Elena had seen everything. And she was still standing, still breathing, still looking at him. Not with fear, but understanding. And that was worse. Later, the house was silent again. Too silent. Elena stood near the stairs as Dante approached. "You don't know what you've done," she said quietly. "I saved you," he replied. "No." She met his gaze. "You brought me into you." That sentence landed where it hurt most. Because it was true, Dante stepped closer. Slow. Controlled. "You think this started when I saved you?" he asked. Elena hesitated. "It didn't." His voice lowered. "I've already decided what you are to me." Her breath caught. "And what is that?" she whispered. Dante looked at her like a man looking at something he could never let go of. "Mine." A silence followed. Heavy. Absolute. Then he added, softer, but far more dangerous. "And we still have unfinished business." Elena stepped back. For the first time, fear returned to her eyes. Not of the world, but of him. And Dante Virelli smiled. Not like a savior, not like a hero, but like a man who had finally stopped pretending he was ever going to let her go. In Dante Virelli's world, nothing ends where it should. Not wars, not debts, and certainly not obsession. Because once something belongs to him, it doesn't leave. It adapts. It survives. It becomes part of the system he controls. And Elena Moretti was no longer outside that system. She was inside it, whether she accepted it or not. The house had never felt this quiet before. Not peaceful. Just controlled silence. The kind that followed violence. Elena stood in her room, staring at her reflection, but not really seeing herself. She looked the same, but she wasn't, because now she knew everything. Who Dante was, what he was capable of, what she meant in his world, and somehow, that was worse than not knowing. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She didn't answer. The door still opened. Course it did. Dante never waited for permission. He stepped in slowly, his presence filling the room before his voice did. "You didn't eat." Elena didn't turn. I wasn't hungry. A pause. You need to take care of yourself? She let out a quiet, humorless breath. That's ironic. Coming from the man who locked me in a war one didn't start. Silence. Then, I didn't lock you in, Dante said calmly. Elena turned sharply now. You brought me into it. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, because both knew the truth sat somewhere in between. Dante stepped closer. Slow. Controlled. I told you before, he said quietly. You're part of this now. Elena shook her head. No, I'm not part of this. Her voice dropped. I'm the reason it exists. That made him pause. Not visibly, but internally, because she had figured it out faster than he expected. The leverage, the pressure point, the weakness. His weakness. Elsewhere in the city, men were already preparing for the next move, because Dante Virelli had made a mistake, not in strategy, in attachment. And in their world, attachment was fatal. She's the key, one of the rival leaders said, his voice low, certain. Then we take her, another replied. No, the first man corrected. We don't take her. A pause. We make him choose. Back at the estate, Elena tried to leave again. This time, not quietly. She walked straight toward the main entrance. 2 guards stood there, still silent, watching. I'm leaving, she said. No response. I'm not asking. Still nothing. Her frustration snapped. You don't get to decide where I go. A voice came from behind her. Yes, I do. She didn't need to turn. She already knew. Dante! I'm not your property, she said, her voice sharp, controlled anger cutting through every word. A dangerous silence followed. Then Dante walked past her. Slowly, until he stood in front of the doors she couldn't open. He looked at them briefly, then back at her. No, he said quietly. You're not. A pause. Then his voice lowered. But you are mine. The words didn't sound louder, but they felt heavier, like something final had just been spoken out loud. Elena's breath caught, not because she didn't expect it, but because part of her knew. He meant it in a way she couldn't fight. That night, the tension shifted again, not outside, inside. Because Dante wasn't watching her the same way anymore. He wasn't observing. He was reacting every time she moved, every time she spoke, every time she looked at him without fear. It was getting harder for him to maintain control. And control was the only thing that had ever kept him stable. Elena noticed it. How long before I become a problem? She asked suddenly. Dante didn't answer. She stepped closer. You said I'm part of this now. Her eyes locked onto his. So tell me the truth. A beat. What happens when I stop being useful? That question lingered. Longer than it should have. Because Dante didn't have an answer he was willing to give. Instead, he said something else. You won't. Elena almost laughed. That's not how your world works. No, he agreed quietly. It's not. A pause. Then, but you're not like anything in my world. That was the truth. The one he didn't say out loud often. Because it made everything more dangerous. Days passed, but nothing settled. The tension grew sharper. Closer. More personal. Until one night, Elena woke up to silence that felt wrong. Not controlled. Not safe. Wrong. She stepped out of her room slowly. The hallway lights were dim. Too dim. Her instinct screamed before her mind caught up. Something had changed. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Not familiar. Not controlled. Intruders. Before she could react, a hand covered her mouth from behind. Don't scream. The voice was unfamiliar. Cold. Calculated. You're coming with us. Her heart slammed against her chest. This wasn't Dante. This was the consequence of him. But before they could move, a sound cut through the air. Sharp. Final. The man holding her dropped instantly. Silence followed. Heavy, terrifying. Then another man fell, and another. No chaos, no shouting, just controlled elimination. And then Dante stepped out of the darkness, his expression unreadable, but his eyes not calm, not controlled. Something far worse. Elena had never seen him like that before, not even during the attack. This wasn't power. This was something personal. "You're not taking her," he said quietly. The last man standing hesitated. That was all it took. Moments later, silence returned. But this time, it felt different, because Dante didn't move away. He walked straight toward Elena, stopped right in front of her, close enough that she could feel the tension radiating from him. "You're shaking," he said. "I almost got taken," she replied, breath unsteady. A pause. Then his voice dropped. "They wouldn't have made it out alive. That's not the point." Silence. Then Elena said something that changed everything again. "I don't want to be the reason you burn everything down." That made him still. Completely. Because that was exactly what was happening, and he knew it. Dante looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "They don't get to touch what's mine." There it was again. That word, men. But this time, it didn't sound like control. It sounded like a warning. To everyone else? Later that night, Elena stood by the window, looking out at a city that no longer felt distant. It felt like a trap, a web. And she was at the center of it. Dante approached slowly. "You should rest," he said. She didn't turn. "If I stay here, this doesn't stop, does it?" "No." "And if I leave?" A pause. Longer this time. "Then it gets worse." Elena closed her eyes briefly, because there it was. The truth she couldn't escape. There was no safe version of this. Only different kinds of danger. She turned to face him. "What do you want from me?" Dante didn't answer immediately. For once, he didn't have a controlled response ready, because what he wanted wasn't simple, wasn't strategic, wasn't safe. Finally, he said, "I want you to stop looking at me like you can walk away." Elena's breath caught. "And if I can?" A long silence. Then Dante stepped closer. Slow. Certain. "You can't." Not because she wasn't strong enough, but because he wouldn't allow it. That was the truth behind the words. And they both understood it. Outside, the war was no longer building. It had begun. And inside the Virelli estate, something even more dangerous was forming. Because Dante Virelli was losing the one thing that made him untouchable. Control. And Elena Moretti was becoming the one thing he could not predict or survive without.